Awesome. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lucas Alexander. I'm head of customer success and operations here at Cision. So happy to be here today. Get the opportunity to sit down with our guest, Mike Taylor from Accor, about a topic that we're seeing so many PR and comms teams talk about right now. And if you aren't, well, you completed step one by joining this webinar. So we're really happy to be here today. Before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping items to ensure the best viewing experience. So the first is you can rearrange, resize any of the boxes on your screen to your liking. The second is any technical difficulties. In the bottom left-hand side of your screen, I believe you can get some troubleshooting tips there. Or you can just submit your issue in the questions box and we'll get someone to answer. And then we will have time at the end for Q&A at the end of the webinar. So super excited about that. Always great to hear from our PR community. Answer your questions live. So please submit those in the question box and we'll try our best to follow up either live on the webinar or after the event. At the bottom of your screen as well, you should see a box that says speak to an expert. So you can let us know if you're interested in a free consultation with a Cision expert following the session, whether that's for help or want to see the platform. Definitely don't hesitate to get in touch. And last but not least, and arguably most importantly, the session is being recorded. So all who registered today will get an on-demand video to rewatch or to share with colleagues. So that's all for housekeeping. Let's get started by introducing our guest today, Mike Taylor, your VP of Group External Communications at Accor. We're so happy that you're with us today. How are you doing today?
It's great. No, and I appreciate you inviting me to chat with you today.
I always hesitate asking people how they're doing in the middle of December. What a question to ask, right? End of year, getting ready to turn another page. Such a busy time of the year. How you hanging in?
No, I mean it is a busy time of the year. We're trying to wrap up a lot of projects and also just get ready for the start of 2023. So definitely a very active time of year, but also love talking shop. So happy to jump on this call with you.
Cool. Hey, so super excited to chat. Such an important topic. Everyone is looking to streamline operations, build scalable programs and frameworks, create efficiencies. But first, tell us more about yourself, your career path, right? How did you get into PR? What did you study? Where are you from?
Yeah, so I mean, I did start in a PR and communications course, so I did take that as my background and decided to really pursue a career in hospitality just because I was super passionate about travel. So when I was young and even as into young adulthood, I mean, really loved to travel, see new places, had a real passion for meeting new people. I mean, food plays a big role there as well. I love going to new places and really getting to experience the food and also just meeting and being exposed to new cultures. So I think for me, travel is just a huge passion. So combining that background in comms with travel just made sense. I think for me, I've now been with Accor for 6 years, and I mean, prior to joining the group, I was fortunate to work with a number of really great hospitality groups and brands, and really fortunate as well that I had the opportunity to really be exposed to all layers of communications. So, I mean, you think of media relations, crisis communications, social media, corporate comms. I mean, we've done a lot of events and activation. So, really, I've been lucky that my career has really spanned a lot of disciplines within the comms function.
Awesome. And so, at Accor, what are really, right now your key business objectives and, leading these objectives globally? What would that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe just a bit of background for people on the call as well. Everyone may not be familiar with Accor, but We're, I mean, a global hospitality leader with 40 plus brands around the world. We have more than 5,300 hotels, and we operate in 100 plus countries. So, I mean, it is truly a global group. I think drilling down more at our comms objectives, I would say it's not just even this year or next year, but just more broadly. I think these are things that really are more strategic and guide us on a 3 to 5 year period. It's really about managing and enhancing the positioning of the group, but also the individual brands within the corporation. So, I mean, again, 40 plus brands, there's a lot to manage. I think too, it's supporting the organization's top line strategies with really tailored comm support. So again, with so many brands, so many entities, so many hotels, it's not a one size fits all. So it's finding what kind of approach to communications fits with the area of the business correctly. I think also to just driving awareness, but on top of awareness, also understanding. So we just don't want people to know about us. We want them to really understand what we're about, what our brands are about. And how we do that is through really compelling content, storytelling, activations, events, and really bringing to life those brands through more earned channels. And then maybe last is just, and I think this is probably one of the most important nowadays, is just building trust and really maintaining those relationships, not only with kind of our guests, but also with all of our key stakeholders. So that's employees, owners, investors, partners, and really anybody that would be touched externally from a comms perspective.
Yeah, that resonates so much, even with, what we're seeing in, initiatives that we run, and in talking with our customers, really continuing to build that trust remains a core part of PR objectives for so many customers of ours globally. And so really, like, what was your, that being said, your experience leading up to really, determining that you needed that global PR solution to really help you scale? What was your experience leading up to that point?
Yeah, so I mean, when I came into the company, if you think Accor's gone through, I mean, a lot of growth and acquisition over the last decade. So when I arrived, there was a really fragmented support system. So we were using a lot of different providers, regions, and brands were doing things that were maybe being approached on a very individual basis. So there wasn't a larger global strategy in place on how we would affect media intelligence. So I think that was one of the key areas why we really looked at bringing Cision on board. I think another was certainly cost synergies. So again, it's not necessarily efficient to be having multiple providers, multiple systems. Also, people were subscribing to different services depending on if they were global or regional or hotel level. So it was really looking at what was that total investment being made as an organization, and then how could we maximize that investment. And then I think lastly, it was more just around consistency around our tracking, but more importantly, our KPIs and reporting. So again, I think we really had to drive around creating a consistent approach to comparing apples to apples, if you will. So made a lot of progress in that regard, but those are some of the reasons why we really looked at bringing in a global solution.
Yeah. The consolidation piece is also something, that we continue to hear, with our customers, and that we're trying to help them solve, especially, with some of the economic factors, really helping them bring it all together into one solution that really creates that consistency across all the things that you mentioned. So before we get into like the main topic today, which is frameworks and really like PR and like technical operations, again, just a quick reminder, we'll at the end of today's event, we will have that live Q&A. So don't forget, if you have any questions for Mike or for myself, definitely be sure to use that question box that's next to the media player. So Mike, as a key member of Accor's global comms team, right? One of your key responsibilities is really to help implement PR frameworks, right? And the tools to help streamline the operations for the group's brands, the regional and the hotel teams from a comms and PR standpoint. But can you tell us really like what are PR frameworks? What do they look like? How would you describe them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, maybe just in simple terms, it's really providing just consistent and really a streamlined way of working. We, again, I said we're a global organization. We have comms professionals centrally, but also on a regional and a hotel level. So it's really providing more that common space or I hate to say the word framework, but it's providing those common SOPs, those systems, those tools, but also just overall guidance on how we go to market, how we work, and how we deliver our messages. So I think for me, it's really around kind of defining those methods and how we can then successfully kind of create, plan, and execute against our global comm strategy.
Yeah, so really, you know, you have the frameworks, you have those SOPs, right? And that gets communicated, socialized, you know, within Accor, within the business. And on the other side, you have, you know, the tools, you have the Cision Comms Cloud. How has Cision Comms Cloud really helped you apply some of those metrics and help you socialize those metrics and really bring
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in the case of Cision, it's really providing a central tool, but also just like overarching guidance on how we really want to handle um, certain activities within communications. So it could be news distribution, monitoring, media outreach and engagement, and it's really again providing a consistent approach around those areas. And so how we do that, I mean, it's through global guidelines, it's through webinars, it's through one-on-one calls, it's through, I mean, it's not just sending out an SOP, it's really around constant engagement with our comms network.
And do you think that really the implementation of those SOPs and the use of the comms cloud, the Cision Comms Cloud, like has it really created a sense of consistency and, you know, created that common language for the entire, you know, company to that common PR language?
Yeah, I mean, we still have some work to do there. It's a never-ending job, and I mean, I think even that comes back to frameworks. I mean, this is not something that you just set in place and never touch it again. I think that they constantly have to be looked at, evolved, refined, and I mean, just an example of our press release protocol. I mean, I think in the 6 years I've been at Accor, I think we've refined it 4 or 5 times already. So it is something that, I mean, it's not something you again just do and then pack away. But I do think it has increased. I mean, certainly there's more consistency now in language that we use when we're talking about communications. I think it's certainly aligned our resources around the world on kind of the type of reporting that we want to do, the KPIs we want to share. I think too, like, I mean, a great example would be just crisis and issues management. So, I mean, that's the Cision Cloud has provided a lot of benefits for us. And I mean, one example, and this is the broader Cision services that we offer, that we subscribe to. But I mean, if you think about the need to react quickly, well, I mean, last year, and I mean, earlier this year, and even now, I mean, the conflict in Europe between between the Ukraine and Russia, I mean, that's something that we had to react to extremely quickly. We had colleagues that were being impacted. Even operations teams on the ground really didn't have a lot of time to kind of report up to us because they were so busy dealing with the crisis situation in the markets. And we had a real need to kind of communicate quickly on that. So we were able to kind of build a daily bulletin on top of what we were already doing that allowed us to kind of communicate very quickly and efficiently. It allowed us to cover a lot of different stakeholders within the organization because there was some challenges around who could communicate with who. We had teams on the ground that were restricted in some of the activities that they were able to manage. So that's just, one example of how we were able to kind of improve our operations with the Cision products.
And so with everyone, yeah, I can imagine, especially that conflict that you made reference to, how quickly the need to react, but also the quickly, the need from a PR perspective to make decisions, and how the PR team helps your leadership make their decisions. So yeah, I can totally understand that, and respect the amount of pressure that must have been behind there. More from that organizational perspective though, and just thinking of what folks on the call might be asking, how are your teams physically set up to really use the platform today, to use Cision Comms Cloud to really execute the strategy from the frameworks that you're delivering to them?
Yeah, so in the case of Cision, it's really about I think having the resources in place that can help us then operationalize everything. So we've nominated Cision champions across the world that really they're the go-to in the market for any troubleshooting, questions on the platform, escalating needs or issues with the platform. Gaps that might be developing, things that we may need to anticipate. So really, I think they give us that regional intelligence, then that allows us to kind of then refine and enhance kind of our global solution. Part of this is also it's around the creation of materials, because again, I think if we're trying to provide that framework, that guidance, it's the people need the resources to do that. So we've been able to create reference documents, best practices, tips on how to use the system effectively. And I think one of the most important things has just been a lexicon around PR language and KPIs. And I think that's even helped us quite a bit internally, so that everyone's using that same common language. But those are just a few examples.
And what flexibility do you also give sort of, your teams operating regionally around customizing some of the things that they can do in the Cision Comms Cloud? Is there room for that?
Yeah, so that's a great example, and I think we had hotels in the Middle East that wanted specific services, wanted more robust reporting from a broadcast, print, online capacity. And so we went in, had discussions with them on to kind of fully understand their needs. We're able to kind of create some local specific content in there that really applied to them. So again, it's giving them that framework to kind of that baseline to operate. But then we do look at it on a regional by regional, or even in some cases a hotel by hotel basis, to understand how do we have to localize that service so that they're getting the most out of it.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. And one of the things, I think a lot of this speaks to not just the comms cloud, right? I think it's also some of the other services as well here. I know that you also get, a daily global briefing from our insights team, right? So how does that fit into the frameworks that you lay out for your team? What do you expect your teams, globally and also regionally to do with that morning briefing?
Yeah, I think maybe first and foremost, it just keeps PR top of mind. I think everybody's inboxes are incredibly full. So I think just on a daily basis, it keeps what we're doing front and center. We also know too that news travels faster than it ever has before. So it really allows that product that we subscribe to really allows us to kind of get in front of all layers of leadership with a baseline kind of understanding of what's happening across the organization. And then we're not kind of having to play catch up with sharing information after it's people are already hearing about it. So I think for us, it's just really staying in front of people. I think too, it allows leaders to really then cascade those more global updates to their teams. So if you're working for a specific hotel or you're working for a specific brand, you may not have a full understanding of what's happening across the wider organization. So I think it really allows us to then broaden that scope of awareness on the group, which I think is great. I think just to PR for PR, I think we're often tasked with showcasing our activity or what maybe other teams are working on, but we really don't have a lot of time necessarily to really go in and report on a day-to-day of what we're doing. So that daily bulletin really, again, allows us to kind of do a little bit of subtle PR for PR, if you will. And there's really little time investment there. So I think creating reports, doing things that really showcase success, sizzle reels, those things are things that take time, where that again is a daily reminder of kind of what's happening across the organization and what I guess the topics, trends, or touch points that PR is the PR and communications organization is touching.
Yeah, I love what you just said about PR for PR. That's such a it's such a strong way to think about it, because like when you compare sort of like PR to marketing or some other functions, there's still a bit more of a challenge to really show the value of PR, right? And so I think things like whether it's using the platform or using sharing that daily briefing that our insights team prepares on a daily basis really helps like show that value over time, and really gets the internal stakeholders, at least when I was working in PR as well, that's a big part of it, is the internal stakeholders truly understanding that language of PR and what the value is.
Yeah, and I think too, just we're not necessarily just looking at what we're doing either. So that insights briefing also includes a short recap on like trends. It also analyzes what our competitors are doing. So it's not just again looking internally. It does provide greater insights around just the hospitality sector, and really that allows us to kind of then shape and inform our plans and strategies as well, having a clear sense of kind of what's happening across the sector. And then I think too, it allows us to kind of understand what's resonating. So what's driving news, what are issues that we may not even have line of sight of that we need to be aware of. So it not only helps inform maybe the group strategy, but it really helps inform and shape our departmental comm strategy as well.
Yeah, I remember like in a past life working in PR, like I was saying, it was that daily briefing was a time-consuming thing to put together. I remember that much because I did it myself. But then really helped like bring, like I almost viewed it as that collective agenda for PR for the day as well. Like for me, it was like, well, what PR opportunities are there? Like what follow-ups with journalists do I have to do? And then how can I share success for my team? And what are my competitors doing? Really building that overall agenda, that shared agenda for the whole PR comms organization within the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think even one benefit that we probably don't even talk enough about either is the obviously we're communicating. I mean, there's a lot of news on the organization, so we're cherry picking the highlights that go out through that daily briefing. But there's also a secondary briefing that just comes to our comms organization, the leaders on a global level, that things that maybe we don't want cascaded around the world, or that are issues that we're trying to monitor, or it could even just be topics that just maybe don't level up, that they're high enough to kind of prioritize for wider global reach. But again, those are things that our team gets to see on a daily basis, that we don't have to go in and check and pull and try to go out to our regions to find. That's really being kind of curated for us and delivered to us on a very bespoke level.
Yeah. And just as we've been talking, I've been really like imagining myself in your shoes at Accor, and an important part of your role is bringing all of this PR data to your executives, right? And so how has like the streamlining of PR operations through like the Cision Comms Cloud or through that briefing allowed you and your leadership to improve corporate decision making as well, such as reacting to trending topic or seeing what's resonating, just, because you just mentioned that resonating theme.
Yeah, I mean, I think it allows us to really just stay focused and not get distracted. I think we use those tools to understand what's really driving the performance, what's moving the needle for our brands, but also what's resonating with media, or what's topical. So I think for us, it's allowing us to kind of stay really focused. I think it's also allows us to then convey to our internal teams, so our marketing teams, or other functional teams of they may be wanting us to communicate something, but there may be obstacles or challenges of maybe we need to affect our just refine our strategy. So it's doing things like that. I think it's allowed us to be, again, much more quicker and efficient in really analyzing the data and presenting it as well, so that we're kind of leading that conversation, not and really driving those trends forward, and not necessarily just coming in at late in the game and following them. And then maybe I think too, another key piece is just, we're a global organization, so we have leadership really spread around the world. We also have not only just leadership, but we have, hundreds of thousands of team members. And so these tools really allow us to communicate on scale with a very wide audience. So I think those are some maybe the key points in that regard.
Yeah. Definitely the proactivity over reactivity, right? Like, I know sometimes reactivity is important and we need to be prepared for that, but the, leading the message rather than following the message, definitely, the use of tools are super important in enabling that. And so since the theme of, today's webinar is operations, a big part of operations is efficiency, right? And capacity. How has, now that we're implementing these tools, how have the tools like Cision Comms Cloud impacted your team's efficiency specifically? Like when we think of monitoring campaigns as an example, or analyzing the impact of those campaigns, maybe talk to us a bit about that efficiency.
Yeah, I think it's allowed us to really just spend the time on the things that are important. So it's about really building and maintaining the relationships with key media around the world. It's allowed us to spend, or not maybe spend less time, but make our time more efficient in really analyzing the campaigns or those big projects that we're working on that really determine kind of budget and investment in from a communications point of view. So I think too, it's really allowed us to kind of maybe refine or prioritize our editorial calendar. So again, having 40 plus brands and operating in over 100 plus countries, we have a lot of news. We have a lot to talk about. So I think it's allowed us to really prioritize what are those key topics, but also just on a regional level, what maybe needs to stay local, what has the potential to kind of go more broadly across maybe a region or several regions, and then really what needs to layer up as a global news topic. So I think for us, it's really played a big role in helping us kind of prioritize that. And I think part of that is also looking at historical data. So we have information that we can look back on. Again, what campaigns resonated? What did we do when we worked on those campaigns? What was the strategy that was taken? And again, how can that then influence future activities? So that's probably a few examples.
Yeah, definitely, like not redeploying, but allowing PR people to focus their energy on the things that are most impactful in PR, and less on the those repetitive tasks and the very manual, tedious tasks that sometimes like manually looking up articles and trying to get articles from so many different sources. So with that being said, as you know, operations roles are such an important part of so many different businesses, right? With key business functions such as like sales ops or marketing ops, or even customer success ops is something that's really gaining a lot of steam. And so in talking about frameworks and streamline operations, how ready do you think like the PR profession is for a PR ops role, right? Like allowing, teams to focus, exclusively on that data, on the use of these tools and bringing it all together, in a streamlined fashion. Imagine having someone or a team dedicated to the use of those PR tools and streamlining data. How ready do you think we are for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely ready, and I think we've been ready probably for a long time. I think it comes down to, I mean, always resource and budget. Probably for most organizations is the challenge, but I think I mean it's making that business case. I mean, the value of communications to an organization is invaluable, but I think PR and comms people aren't necessarily always the best at kind of building that business case. So I think part of it is building that business case. I think maybe one of the reasons why it's needed as well is, I mean, it really is spread. Like usually these types of frameworks or this type of area really does get spread across comms teams more widely, which doesn't make it that streamlined. So it's kind of going against what we're trying to achieve. Also, too, I think everyone's expertise level really does differ depending on maybe the product or service or tactic that we're talking about. And also, I think, too, having multiple kind of teams involved, things can easily slip through the cracks or not be prioritized. So I think it's definitely needed. And I think if you look at, I mean, other areas of business, I mean, like you said, sales, marketing, I mean, technology, a lot of these teams have dedicated operations leads. So I do think it's something that as we move forward, it's something that, I mean, PR and comms teams could look at trying to build out a dedicated role for, but I think it does have to tie back to a strong business case.
Yeah, like everything else, right? Like everything really needs to make sense from a business standpoint, whether you like it or not. So we're December 8th already. Like we said, we're coming up on the end of the year here already. So looking ahead to 2023, with everything that we discussed, we talked about so many things, right? Frameworks, efficiency creation. What are some other topics that you think are, really going to be resonating that, PR leaders and comms managers, specialists, coordinators on the call today should really keep their ears and eyes open for? You mentioned trust earlier, like, maybe what do you think 2023 is going to look like from a trust perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think trust is going to be incredibly important, and I think when we maybe tie that back to just more broadly around trust with messaging, but it's also trust internally in the data and information that we're presenting to our stakeholders. So I think when we're talking about frameworks, I think people do need to have trust in what we're presenting them, that there's credibility behind that. And I think having a third-party resource like Cision really helps validate that. But looking, I think, more broadly, I mean, I think mission and value-based storytelling, I think, is going to be really, really key. And I think trust even plays in there. I think you kind of have to walk the walk. And if you're saying that you're a sustainability leader or that you contribute to your community, I mean, you really should have the actions that are backing up those claims. I think, too, the shifting roles in journalism, I think you're seeing a lot of change in the media landscape still. So I think again, bringing it back maybe to frameworks and media intelligence platforms, it's more how can we continue to kind of refine and tailor that pitch for our media. We know that they're working with continually less resources, less time. So how can we make it as easy for them to be a partner with us? And then maybe just maybe looking at, I mean, the economy. I mean, hopefully we don't get into a global recession, but that is something that too, I think we're using the frameworks that we have in place to really monitor and keep tabs on kind of the economy, what's happening in global markets, so that do we need to refine our comm strategy? Do we need to refine our messaging? Do we need to shift in our go-to-market strategies? So again, all of those frameworks really help inform what we're doing on a again, I hate to say it, but global comms strategy level.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like one of the things, even for me and for us, like is really following the shifting role in journalism, right? It's something that as a leader in PR and in PR technology, we follow quite closely, and having those, more tailored pitches, right? Like the mass blasting emails to, 6,000 contacts at once, like that's not tailored pitching, right? And so I think the journalism is really looking to get a bit more into that personalization, really what that story means for you, right? And I think the use of the tools are really important for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point as well. I think we always try to have put ourselves in the shoes of all of our stakeholder groups. So as much as we want to tailor information to media and have customized pitches that are very bespoke, we also have the other side where we have internal executives asking us to push this out to everyone and everywhere. So again, I think it's a balance between the two. I think there are some ways where if we think it's something that needs to be broadly communicated and broadcasted around the world, I mean, we look at potentially a wire service. If it's something where it's a very targeted message, it could be something, let's say, well-being. I mean, we're really then going to try to customize that message for those media targets. So I think it's balancing those internal and external pressure points, so that we're delivering against kind of the needs and of all of our stakeholder groups.
Yeah, for sure. And like what you just said, and situation A, we go for wire service. Situation B, we go for more tailored. Even with my role being operations, for me that sounds like an SOP, right? A standard way of operating. So is that something that would be in a framework and in some of the things that guiding principles that you deliver?
Yeah, so I mean, it is in some of our SOPs. I think too, SOPs, while they definitely shape what we do, I think there is flexibility. So there are times where we have the overarching kind of approach, but depending on the topic, the stakeholders involved, the markets that we're dealing with, we do need to step outside that box sometimes and create a tailored approach. But again, aligned with that common practice, if you will. So I would say definitely.
Yeah. So Mike, as we've been chatting here today, such an important topic. Our audience has been lighting up the chat here. So I would like to turn over just for a few minutes before going into conclusions to address some of the questions the attendees have sent in. And one of the ones that just came in is really interesting is, what do frameworks look like at the local level, right? So like so they're, you're delivering them out at a global level. Are they built to operate the same way at a local level, or would they look any different?
I think they're built to look similar, but again, with local adaptation. I also feel like at a local level, there's likely not the resources or maybe even time and place to then develop a lot of this material. So our role as a kind of a global team is to provide that framework, deliver it to them. There's consistency around the organization, but then they tailor it for their specific local market, or it could not even be a local market. It could be a specific brand. It could be a specific product offering, but creating that common framework that then gets adapted on a case by case. I think is how we look at it. And again, I think that saves everyone time because we're not having to recreate the wheel every time. Everyone's not doing things that are dissimilar. So it isn't necessarily meant to be the be all end all, but it does, again, provide a common approach into how we work and how we operate.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have another question here. When deciding on the right PR platform, which features were the most important to you in delivering, knowing that like, okay, we can deliver on this framework with these features. These are the key ones that we need. Which features are those, and how are they being used at Cision?
Yeah. So I mean, I think for us, it's the global monitoring solution. I think is critical. I mean, without that in place, we're really going back to a very archaic way of reporting or analyzing or monitoring what we're doing. And I think even having multiple platforms makes that very difficult. I think if you're looking at the monitoring portal, also, I mean, someone sitting in Paris has access to information or coverage being reported in Sao Paulo. So I think for us, that just having that both inbound but outbound view of what's happening across different topics is key. Obviously, the media database, I think, is critical. I think trying to manage media lists in-house is, I mean, quite a bit of work if you don't have an external provider giving you that kind of guidance on who's shifting, who's taking on a new beat, who's left an organization. Obviously, we do track some of our freelance contacts individually in the platform, but having that support on the media database front is critical. And then obviously just the importance of the daily bulletin. I think, again, it does keep PR top of mind. It's something that's automated. It saves us quite a bit of time. So I think that's really key. Thinking of something that I'd want that we used to do that I'd love to bring back, but it's more looking at qualitative analysis of earned media coverage. So that is something that, unfortunately, just due to COVID, the pandemic, some of that fell off. But that, to me, is, I think, where we want to be. And I think it's not just analyzing what we're doing, but it's really understanding, again, what messaging points are how is our messaging being interpreted by the market? What markets are picking up that type of coverage? So it's really drilling down from the quantitative, where I think we're in a really good place, to more the qualitative.
Yeah, and I'd almost take that even a step further. A lot of customers ask us as well about, like the qualitative, but taking it, well, what should we do now? What is Cision seeing other customers do that, we can apply? What would you recommend? Being really that trusted advisor. And certainly, like, our insights team is definitely behind that and making these recommendations to our customers. And that's certainly what we see on a daily basis. So definitely the recommendation side as well is important. And then what would be the top 3 important elements? Like, if you had to build a PR framework from scratch today, brand new, what would be the 3 most important elements that would go into a PR framework that you could use sort of platform to measure?
So maybe I'm going to flip this a little bit. Maybe I think one of the starting points is really communicate with your leadership. So I think before you even start to go and creating something, understand, like, and I have alignment on, like, what are the KPIs they actually they value, how do they want their information delivered, what's the budget that's available to deliver on all of this, but also use that as an opportunity to kind of educate those leaders on the communications discipline, also the capabilities, and I think that's a great starting point. I think too many people just hear, okay, we need results, so they go off and they create something without really a firm understanding of like what they're delivering and why. And I think part of that also is using your supplier, your partner, to help you kind of through that process. So I think for us, I mean, Cision has been great in that regard, in that you help us bring, again, that third party credibility to what we're telling them around metrics or KPIs or monitoring, or the importance of, again, communications, and kind of layering that up to them. I think just kind of coming back to the qualitative piece there. I mean, when we were doing more qualitative analysis, we did have one executive that just didn't understand why we were doing it. What was the benefit? Didn't really take the time to kind of read the reports. So we took a step back and we said, you know what? Okay, we're going to walk you through not only just a report, but like the rationale of why we're doing this. And then again, post call, we invested about an hour and a half. But then I think post that individual who did have a lot of influence on kind of our budget, our strategy, our resources, had a much greater understanding and deeper understanding of, well, what does all this mean? And I think sometimes PR metrics aren't the easiest to understand. So it's not like we're delivering a revenue figure or a sales figure, or some other form of measurement that they're accustomed to seeing. So I think part of that is really just about educating our internal stakeholders sometimes.
Yeah, awesome.
I know I didn't give you three, but I think for us, that's a really key piece of it.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand, like, so many customers, even that we work with, come to us and say, well, where do we even start? Right? Like a different, PR teams from all different levels of maturity scale, are coming to Cision and asking, well, how do I start? And I think that's such great insight. I
think just even on that point as well, I mean, once you have had those discussions and you have a starting point, I mean, really put it down on paper, put it in a brief, put it in an RFP. I mean, it's really going to help you map out your needs and understand kind of what you're trying to achieve, what you may not be able to achieve right away. So like, what's part of the future plan? But it'll also give you confidence in, again, I think, aligning with whatever partner you decide to go with. But I think sometimes people just react, and we need to get a supplier on board and go out and talk to someone. But again, I think really mapping out those needs is critically important.
Yeah, for sure. And what would you say in terms of what goes into that framework is measurable, right? Is everything that goes into that framework need to be somehow measured, whether it's a KPI, like, I'm thinking like email open rate, or, that you're, in the email pitches that you're doing? How much of what goes into those frameworks are actually measurable in using like the Cision Comms Cloud, for example?
Yeah, so I mean, I think some of it is. I think some of it's likely not. I think too, we need to look at sometimes more broadly of other ways to analyze as well. So certainly look at decision metrics that come out of or the KPIs and metrics that come out of the Cision services that we subscribe to. But yeah, looking at open rates, looking at performance around certain things that we're working on relative to, I mean, it could be circulation, it could be frequency, all of those things. But then I think looking more broadly in the organization, I mean, we have analytics and customer marketing teams that we can go out and understand, like put questions in a survey, find out where are they getting their messaging from, how did they find out about a certain topic. So I think some of those things maybe are measurable through our platforms. Sometimes you have to go outside of that. And then I think also just looking more broadly at organizational success. So is the organization performing well? I think all teams contribute to those things. So I think trying to dig deeper sometimes in that it may not be something you can accurately measure, but I think they're more broad strokes of are you contributing to kind of overall organizational success.
Yeah. I'm going to go for one more question here, just looking at the time. This is a really interesting one. I personally love this one. It's so just to give you the context, Mike, is like we see this a lot as well, and at Cision, especially working with new customers. Customers will come to us and say, "Hey, it takes us 30 days to put together an analysis report, right, about a single campaign or a product launch." Can you speak to some of the time savings that, like, at a high level, that, in using tools and how important that is for like an operations PR ops?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit. I would say it's a bit of a catch-22 at the beginning. So it definitely is not a time saver. I would say the first 3 months, 4 months. I mean, you do have to invest the time to establish things, create the foundation, get things running efficiently. There is going to be refinement. So, I mean, that is a reason. That is an investment in time at the outset that I think people need to be aware of. But in the long run, it definitely saves time. It definitely makes us more efficient. I think just looking back to even when I came into the organization, I mean, we were having to pull in reports from agencies, reports from regions, reports from different suppliers that provided the data and information in very different ways. So sure, we could get some of that information quickly, but then we had to spend a lot of time kind of distilling it, creating, putting it in more of a consistent voice, packaging it up. So I think having a supplier or partner like Cision really allows us to go in and I mean, pull things literally in 5 or 10 minutes if we want. So, yeah, I mean, it does take time at the beginning, but I think over the long run, it's going to save you time. And I think that's where it gets a little challenging. I think people just do need to kind of carve out that time at the beginning, invest that time to really understand what you're building, and build it properly, so that in the long run, it is hopefully creating more efficiencies and saving people time.
Yeah, that's what I love to see the most, and just when we look at like our customers and the journey that they go on with us, is how successful the ones are, the customers who, invest the time at the beginning to truly, get into the platform and take the time to learn and to set it up the right way. And what I'm trying to say is what I love to see the most is the customers who, in investing that time, they're also building their frameworks, right? They're coming together live, right?
And it's funny. I mean, we do track engagement, platform engagement on the back end, and there's a correlation. The people that use the platform, the people that have spent the time and invested in learning its capabilities, how to use it effectively, it bears out the results in their local or regional or brand performance. Those are the ones that are driving success, are having success in kind of driving KPIs, outperforming their objectives. So there is a direct correlation. The people that don't use it as effectively, we do see that they're not, their results aren't at the same level. So I think that's even something that we really try to keep tabs on, and again, use those as examples of kind of trying to convince people that it is worth the time and investment.
Yeah. So the last question, and this is just to conclude, and this was from me, and from really to try and understand the local and the regional and the global a bit more, and for our audience as well. Companies of all sizes, right? Building frameworks, using tools. Is this something that only applicable for global companies, or can this be really trickle down as well and scale as well for small or medium-sized business?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody can do it. I think you're maybe need to set realistic expectations on maybe timelines. So if you're a smaller organization, smaller team, you may need to stretch out that timeline of when you want to try to achieve certain milestones. Um, but I do think it's incredibly important for everyone to look at it. Um, and again, I don't think it's something too that we've even perfected. I mean, we've made great strides. We still have a lot of work to do. But I think those smaller organizations too should tap into those larger organizations. I mean, pick up the phone, send a message via LinkedIn, ask people, are there resources? Can you give them some guidance? Are there things that aren't proprietary that they can share to help get them off the ground quicker? So I think there's ways for smaller organizations to certainly achieve this.
Awesome. Mike, this has been such a great conversation. On behalf of our audience, the Cision team, truly thank you for your time and for your insight today. You've always been such a really, important and valuable partner. Accor has been such a valuable partner of ours. So great to hear from you, and from some of the most seasoned PR leaders in the business like yourself. That's one of the one things that I love most about PR is that, so many leaders like yourself are willing to share, and you just spoke about this, on LinkedIn, share the tips and tricks, and we're super thankful for that today. How are you spending your holidays? How are you going to be ending this crazy year?
Well, I mean, first, it was a pleasure to chat with you. So thanks for giving me that opportunity. And I think for the holidays, just looking for a little bit of downtime. It's been especially with the world reopening. I mean, travel really did pick up. Kind of the big end of Q1, beginning of Q2, and we've just been extremely busy this year. So just looking for a little downtime with the family. Maybe hopefully a little bit of snow as well to make it feel like Christmas. But other than that, just trying to take a break and kind of get ready for 2023.
Awesome. Thanks so much again, Mike. We truly appreciate it. And to our audience as well, thanks so much for joining us today. Don't forget to check out the additional resources that were shared with you here. Reach out to any of us if you have any questions. And with that being said, thanks so much. Wishing everyone a great rest of the day and a great rest of the year.